TR, how you doing, man? Good to hear from you. Yeah, so we have a Zoom call tonight. Obviously, it's a little different scenario. Getting the team together, we don't want to be in a big space. We obviously spacing out, so I felt it was better to do it on Zoom. Yeah, the message is going to be a little different. We already had that message in spring training. We talked about a lot of the gameplay aspect. This is a little different. I think following protocols, being safe, making sure we're on time, sticking to schedules. Those are things that are critical for our success this year. If we can limit the amount of exposure we have or the risk factor in getting this virus, the team that honestly keeps their people on the field, their players on the field, is probably going to have an advantage. So, we're still going to address all the things that we talked about in spring training the first time, but I think this message today, which has been an ongoing message, but with the entire group that's going to be involved, I think that those key points are going to be critical.
What about the message of urgency of performance, that you're going to have to, ride the hot hand and do everything you can to win every day? How do you address that with your team?
Yeah, I mean that'll probably be the first thing I talk about as far as just a 60-game schedule and what that looks like and what that means. Basically we're in, I know it's July 24th that we're going to start. It's like going into August, tied for the best record in baseball. We're tied for a playoff spot. There's a lot of obviously strategy that goes involved in that, and our players understand that. I've been communicating that throughout, but yeah, that'll definitely be something that I hit on early, and that's something as we go through camp that I'm going to consistently hit on. But I think the biggest point in the beginning of this is making sure that when they step through these doors, they understand what's expected of them from a protocol standpoint. We could talk about the strategy all spring. We got 20 days to talk about this and discuss this. But I think as they walk through that door, we need to be safe and we need to make sure we take care of each other.
Okay, thank you, John Blake. I'll move back.
We'll go to the line of Jeff Wilson, and just I'm probably going to limit you to 2 questions here because we've got a lot of people. So go ahead, Jeff.
What has feedback from players been to you and the interactions you've had? Are players concerned about what's happening with the virus, concerned about the protocols? How would you characterize these discussions?
I think everybody's kind of going through it in their own way, but yeah, I think guys are definitely concerned about it. Probably more concerned than I anticipated. I think a lot of guys are actually more inclined to be on the safer side. I don't see anybody kind of pushing this aside and kind of disregarding protocols. I feel like everybody's kind of understanding of it and understand why it's important. A lot of guys have families, they have wives, they have kids, they have moms and dads. So I think that the risk is there, and they know that. So, they're doing everything they can. They're coming in excited. Obviously, the guys can't wait to get on the field and see our new ballpark. But at the same time, guys are wearing masks around. We have to kind of get them away from each other at times because they love to be around each other. But I think for the most part, everybody is concerned about it, and they're willing to take on the responsibility that they have to keep everybody safe.
These guys have all been working out all over the country, different availability, access, whatever. Do you think are they ahead of where you thought they would be? Are they prepared to hit the ground running as you guys start this thing up?
Yeah, I do believe so. I believe in the preparation our guys have put in. I'm really proud of that, and I can't speak on behalf of what the rest of the league has done, so I don't know how far ahead we are, but I do believe it is an advantage where our guys are at right now. Even the guys that had less access to facilities or the ability to get live BPs or live at bats, they still are ready. They put in the physical preparation. They understand what's at stake. They understand their mental preparation that they've had to do, in this time off. Some guys are well ahead of where I expected them to be. So it gives us an advantage maybe in the beginning, but we got to continue through and, like I said, stay safe and then continue to prepare the same way.
Okay, we'll go to Chris Halley. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. So I'm really curious about the younger guys. You have a lot of prospects there, especially a guy like Josh Young, who's getting his first taste of a big league camp. What are you expecting out of those guys, and what are you looking for in terms of the younger guys who probably are definitely going to be down the pecking order a little bit? But
I'm looking for growth, honestly. Like this year is going to be a really challenging year for anybody that's not in the major leagues. Clearly, a lot of these minor league guys are going to miss an entire season. We just didn't know, what they were going to have available to them, down the road. And we may have some sort of instructional league, in August or September. But a lot of these guys were handpicked because we feel like they can make an impact pretty soon. I don't suspect some of these guys will have an impact this year. But that doesn't. I mean, if they're on the 60-man, yeah, obviously we can pull them off of that and put them on our major league roster. But I expect a lot of growth. I expect, I've talked to each one of those guys, and to be a sponge, to talk to our coaching staff, to continue to learn, continue to grow. This is a very important time. We don't want to waste a year. We want this year to be obviously important for them to get something out of it. So there's a lot of development that could happen. Like I said, there's a ton of learning and growth, and that's kind of what I expect, and that's the expectations I've given them.
One of the guys who's going to be a key part of your team this year is Odor. Looking back on what he did at spring training, how do you feel? How do you feel about what he did out in Arizona, and are you looking for anything different, or has the message to him changed at all going into these next 3 weeks?
I was impressed. I haven't really seen Rugi a ton. Obviously, I was in Arizona, and he stayed here. He looks good. He's ready. I think this kind of scenario and setting, 60-game season, it kind of suits him pretty well. He's ready. He understands. Game one is critical. It's kind of like a winter ball mentality. So a lot of these guys that have played, in their home countries in Dominican or Venezuela, that's the mentality they have because their season is only 50 or 60 games anyways. So I think this is going to suit him very well. I'm desperate, obviously, I've said this before, for him to get off to a fast start because I feel like he's the type of player that if he gets on a roll, he can carry us. But, from where he was in spring training, now that I see him, he looks good. And he's in a good mental space. He wants to hit the ground running, and that's what we're all kind of hoping for.
Okay, we'll go to Stephen Hopkins. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hey, Chris. Since I got two questions, I better ask them now. First one, obviously you're not picking up where you left off in spring training, with games right away. But, John was talking about the 1 o'clock dinner squad area you're planning to have. Obviously, that's not 9 innings every day, but how do you plan to use that? And kind of explain to us what that's going to be like and how important that's going to be kind of right off, because aren't you starting it right away tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow, I think the first couple of days it's going to be more like a sim game type setting, but then I think Sunday we're actually going to get into some like real games where we're running bases, we're playing defense, we're doing all those things. It's going to be different. Obviously, we have 18 hitters that get to hit, so I feel like we're going to have a lot of at-bats for a lot of guys. We have to pitch on both sides, so I feel like a lot of the younger guys, including the guys that are trying to fight to make a team, and they're going to get plenty of opportunity, probably more so than they would if we were in a normal spring training setting. A lot of games are going to be 7 full innings. We have a lot of looking at Julio's schedule, we have a lot of days where there's 14 innings, basically 14, 16, 14. So we'll kind of go accordingly, but. Our priority guys, our starters are going to get their at-bats that they need. When they feel like they've had enough that day, we can kind of replace them with somebody else. But I feel like for the short, spring training, that we will have enough time and we'll have enough reps to prepare properly. That's the biggest thing that I want to see out of our pitching staff, out of our position players, making sure they get what they need. But also being able to evaluate some of the guys that don't make our team. They're still going to get plenty of at-bats, I feel like. So it's going to be different, though. Obviously, we're playing each other. So, we're going to have to, be creative with getting some things at stake, maybe picking some teams, choosing some teams, doing some creative things to kind of get the creative juices flowing.
The other thing, it might not make effect till the season starts, but outside the virus, there's been all the social protests and all that. There's probably questions about anthem and individual expression during the anthem. I guess what I want to ask you is just what's your thought on that? I mean, has it changed with all the protests and stuff going on? And is it something you address your team with? Kind of just wait to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, we've had calls about this. We've talked as a group, while these protests were going on. I felt it was very important for a lot of our, especially minority players, to share their feelings with their teammates. I think it's really important. I'm not going to get too in depth with my personal views, but I do believe that a lot of these guys have personal opinions, and I'm going to support that. honestly. So I don't know where we stand as far as how the anthem's going to play out, but I will support our team. I will support our players individually if they have personal beliefs that they feel like they need to share. And I think we all need to do that it's such a difficult thing right now in our society. I feel like we all need to kind of understand that, wrap our arms around specific players that maybe have some personal feelings about all this.
Go to Levi Weaver.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Levi.
I was just curious about the decision to move Corey Ragsdale to the first base coach. I mean, this is probably not the most important question you'll get today, but I was just curious how that decision came about.
Yeah, it was. So when we got Corey, Ting last year, was our quote unquote base running, leader. I think we all, as a staff, that's one thing I've stressed. We all kind of, help out with base running. We all kind of promote the ideas that we talk about. But we needed somebody to lead it, and Ting did a great job for us last year in that regard. With Bees and Hector on the bases, they did a great job. So Rags, I kind of he's filling that same role. Well, this year with a 30-man roster to start the season, and Hector has really worked hard with our catching, with our catchers in kind of changing their techniques and framing. There's a lot going on, and we're going to probably likely we keep 3 catchers to start. I don't know for sure, but if we do, that's a lot for the catching instructor, which Hector is. So I felt like it was a little bit much for Hector to continue on with that. When Rags was actually, the head of the base running, I felt like it was just an easy transition to get him over there, take a little bit of a load off Hector, especially in between innings, where Hector, when we're on offense, he could be talking to the catcher. He could be helping Brett Hayes out with, delivering some information. He could talk through techniques during games. He's a lot more available to our catchers during the game, I think, if we take him off of that. And then it allows Rags, from a base running standpoint, to kind of implement a lot of things on the field. So I just thought it was the best case scenario for both guys. And with this, with distancing, with all the protocols in place, it's going to be harder to relay information. So the more bodies we have to do that, I think Hector can help out with that as well.
And we talked a little bit about this with Julio Ronjel yesterday, but guys, the 2 that I'm primarily thinking of are Joe Colombo and Colby Allard. Guys that would have probably been starters in Nashville as the season started, if it had started in April. Those are guys that might be able to be, beneficial in a bullpen if this ends up being like a pennant race sort of situation, but also they are your safety nets in case one of your starters happens to go down. How do you view their workout, their stretch out? Like, how do you view those guys coming into, as you're starting to look at entering a shortened regular season?
Yeah, I think we definitely keep them on a starters program. We keep them. We're going to try to build them back up to as much as we can get them. Now, if they're throwing, if they're lights out in spring in this summer camp, and they're throwing the ball really well, that doesn't mean they can't make our team. Like you said, it's an easy transition to go from, having 4 or 5 ups to, okay, now we're only going to use you for 2 innings. It's an easy transition. I just don't want to, not build them up for a bullpen role, and then somebody goes down in our starting rotation. So we need that depth. And if they're pitching well enough, they could be on our team at any point. So we're not ruling anything out at this point, and we're willing to use anybody in any role. But I definitely want to keep them on a starter's routine right now.
And we'll go to the line of Evan Durant.
Hey, Woody, I wanted to go back to the first thing you talked about when we got on this call. I know what you will explain to the players, but if you look through that operations manual and you go through those protocols, they're detailed and they can be a little bit daunting. How do you get across to those guys what are the primary issues here for their safety and accountability? And does that have any impact on how they play the game? Because it seems like that's always going to be on their mind.
Yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to get ahead of it early. And I know, Jamie Reed and Matt Lucero, our trainer, they're all going to talk. They're all going to explain the importance of it all. But we kind of went through it all with a fine-tooth comb and pulled out all the things in the manual that pertain to their behavior and their actions within the clubhouse, off the field, on the field. So we kind of, did a lot of the work for them. We expect them to still read the 100 and whatever page document, but we've kind of bullet pointed everything that they're responsible for, and I thought that was important, so these guys can we'll have it posted in the clubhouse in different areas, so at least they know. But I think just driving home tonight, I hope I don't have to have too many conversations after the day. I know I will, but just the importance of these protocols and why it's safe, why it keeps us safe, why it keeps guys on the field, and if somebody does happen to get it, which you keep rolling the dice, and just the way this thing is spreading in society, somebody's going to get it, and it keeps it to a minimum, and it doesn't spread throughout the clubhouse, because that would be detrimental for not only their health and safety, which is number one, but to our team. Even when you have to contact trace and do all those things, people might be pulled out of lineups if they had too much close contact with a guy who tested positive. So there's so many factors to all of this, and if we just do what we're supposed to do, we will, not eliminate the risk, but we will definitely keep that risk to a minimum. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get through this season, unscathed, which is maybe impossible, but that's our goal.
The other thing was, you mentioned the Zoom call with the minority players. For lack of a better term, how important was it also basically for your generic white guys to have some give and take in that conversation?
No, I thought it was great, and honestly, the honesty that our players had with each other, it was just a lot of, you just need to, for those that haven't been affected by anything that that's been discussed in the world right now, and especially in our country, you need to listen. You need to listen to some of these stories. Just it may not have affected you, and it may not be a problem throughout the entire society, but it has affected somebody that and these stories are critical for all of us to hear. Because I know I haven't had to deal with a lot of with any of the issues that I've been told, and personal stories that I've heard over the last, 20 years in baseball, honestly. So a lot of this coming to light, I think, is important. It's important for all of us to share these stories. And as far as these guys are comfortable enough to share it, they were with their teammates, because they know that that's a safe place. I wanted to provide a safe place for these guys to discuss with people that care about them. And our teammates they all love each other. They all like each other. The staff a lot of the staff was on the call. So it was we need to keep doing this stuff, though. We need to keep having these conversations, because it's important to get these to get more awareness, to get more empathy for what other people go through. And a lot of times we just don't know until we hear these stories.
We'll take a few more. Let's go to Mac Engel. Go ahead, Mac.
Hey, Chris.
What's up, Mac?
How are you? I can't imagine that this has been a lot of fun for you, but in terms of preparing for a season to be played without fans or limited fans, do you think that will have an impact on performance when they're playing in an atmosphere that is, for the most part, I would imagine, pretty foreign to them on the major league level?
Yeah, it's definitely going to factor in. I don't, for 60 games, I tend to think that there won't be by the time you get kind of tired of not having fans, you're in the middle of a pennant race at the end of the season. So if it was 100 and something games, I think we'd be talking about a little different, in a little different way, because there would be a period where, guys get tired of it and they kind of want that atmosphere again. But in a 60 game season, honestly, when you look at the schedule in a 1 or 2 month chunk, it looks really small. I'm typically used to looking at the 6 month season, with all the different, months. Now it looks so small when you look at the actual schedule. So I don't think that we're going to go through that kind of lull period. I just, it's going to be different. You're going to be able to hear a lot more things than you normally wouldn't. Maybe the excitement of the crowd isn't going to be a factor where that could either help you or hurt you. Some guys, maybe younger guys can perform better because they don't have the crowd to deal with. I don't know. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it does play out. I think certain guys will be affected by it, in a positive way, and then some in a negative way. But it's hard to tell as it is right now.
I referenced it earlier on, I think Evan's question. Are you preparing for any kind of scenario, Chris, where you get 20 games into the season and then maybe you're just done playing baseball? Has your mind kind of gone to those places where we may do a little bit of it and then it just stops?
Of course, I think everybody does. You can't help but think that, right? With numbers spiking around the country, that's kind of out of our hands. So, the one thing I'll stress to our team, and I've stressed it to our staff and the players on personal calls, we got to be prepared for anything. We got to be prepared for anything. The worst is yet to come, in my opinion. You just don't know. So, we got to embrace that mentality and say, you know what, whatever comes our way, we're going to take it head on. And I think that, if we have that mentality, we're not going to get frustrated. We're not going to get upset. We're not going to, complain. We're not, that it's easy to do that in this scenario. And I know there's a lot of teams that will do that because they're, poor me kind of attitude. I refuse to have that, and I refuse to allow that in the clubhouse. So, if that's our advantage, it's a huge advantage over another team. So, I'm proud of our guys. They came in ready, and I feel like they can maintain that positive kind of attitude through anything. We have a resilient staff. We have a resilient group of players, and I know I'm not going to, back down from any challenge. So, it is what it is, and we just have to deal with it.
Okay, we'll go to Pat Doney. Go ahead, Pat.
Hey, Chris, good to see you, man. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Pat?
I'm doing real well. Hey, I just one for me. The Athletic had that story that came out today about the players working out together at Palm Beach, and Corey Kluber was in the group with Scherzer and Verlander and some of these all-stars kind of over the last few months. I'm just curious kind of what interaction players had with you guys about what workouts they were doing during this break. And do you like the fact that Corey was out there with the best in the game, kind of learning from them and working with the best in the world these last few months?
Yeah, I think it's good for anybody to kind of work out with the best in the world. Obviously, as long as they're following protocols and keeping away from each other. But yeah, I think we were very aware of what every player was doing. I think that was the intent when we first got shut down. That was probably the number one thing I told our staff. Like, we have to communicate. We have to know what everybody's doing, and our staff did a phenomenal job. From Jose on the strength and conditioning side, Lucky on the medical side, all of our staff on the minor league side, at both places in Arizona and here, scheduling workouts. It was difficult, man. It was hard to keep people distance, like spread out the workouts, for the guys that were actually here. I mean, guys were in Tennessee. They were all over the country, but we knew exactly what guys needed, what to get to them. Some guys were, we had to send nets. Some guys we had to send balls. Anything in between. Like, we did anything we could, but we knew exactly what they were doing and how they were doing it. So that way, if we had to make any adjustments, or when we actually get here, we know exactly like what shape they are in. And I think that hats off to everybody in the organization, because it was definitely a team effort to understand all that.
Okay, last question will be from Emily Jones. Go ahead, Emily.
Hey, Woody.
What's up, Em?
Oh, nothing. So I'm just curious, with such a compacted season, how you're going to determine the length of your leash. You have, guys that if they get off to a slow start, how long are you going to give them? How much does that change now? And I guess what will the thought process be, knowing that you are dealing with such a short season?
Yeah, I think that, I've talked about that a lot, and, I've mentioned it to a lot of players. It's a short leash for sure. If I'm not seeing if we're not seeing as a staff, I don't want to get caught up in small sample. And, I've talked to our analytics people, I've talked to our staff about this. It's really important that we keep our eyes on, what our guys are actually doing, because in a 10-game, 15-game stretch, you may be hitting, 210, but are having really productive at-bats. I've seen that before. And I don't want to pull the plug on anybody if they're doing what we've asked. And knowing that maybe that can, snowball in the direction we want to see it if they continue along that line. So it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard to, for starting pitchers, obviously we have a really good starting five. Knowing when to pull them out of the game. Listen, I'm going to manage every game like it's somewhat a playoff game, but that also works in reverse, right? So if a guy's doing really well, we may just ride him out for as long as possible. So it can go kind of both ways. I can either pull him, early, or I can let him go longer than I normally would, just because we have such a shortened season and so much at stake.
So will you have to be, I know you're so much into the process, and like you said, having good at-bats, will you have to lean toward a little bit more toward results?
It depends on, because I want to stick to the results we're looking for. Like I said, if guys are, if guys are making quality pitches and just getting really, really unlucky, or, I used this example with Julio the other day. If, a reliever goes out in his first outing, he gets pretty unlucky and gives up 5 runs. That kills the season, right? It's a 60-game season. It's going to be hard to make up that ground. But if for the next 8 outings, he's, punching out, 12 per 9 and hasn't given up a run, only given up a couple hits, he may still have a 6 ERA and his numbers don't look great. But, I'm looking at the last 7 or 8 outings and he's been phenomenal. So those are things that, we got to make sure we keep our eye on what's actually happening, how it's happening. We're looking at results. Obviously, we want to win games. But if a guy's doing what we asked, we got to make sure we stick with what we set out, especially last year when we talk about, process stats, process results over, just what the scoreboard says.